So Politico has a hilarious new hit piece out on Bernie Sanders, and I would say that this piece is concern trolling at its finest. Take a look. Republicans pray for Bernie as Democratic nominee. Some GOP lawmakers would like nothing more than a Democratic socialist to be the opposition's presidential nominee. So that's the tone of the entire article. Is they're going, you would be handing an election over to the Republicans if you went with somebody as radical as Bernie Sanders. Yeah. It's hilarious. So Senate Majority Whip John Thune has a quote in there. He says the following: "If we can run a race against a person that's an out-of-the-closet socialist and promoting socialist ideas, it's a great contrast for us." Then you have Mitch McConnell, who said, he's urging Republicans to emphasize to voters that the Republican Party is the, quote, firewall against socialism in the country. John Cornyn /Cornine / however you pronounce it. He's a senator from Texas, and he's up for re-election, and he's trying to cast his race as, quote, a referendum between free enterprise and socialism. And then at the end of the article, they even have some Democrats who are on the record as like, yeah, sure, throw Bernie under the bus, no problem. Now, I thought you guys were all about unity, but apparently when it comes to your left flank, it's the opposite. You're not about unity. You don't want to play defense. You don't want to rep that ideology. You don't want to welcome them into the club. You want to attack them, and you want to take them down a few pegs. So at least let's be honest and upfront about it. I just don't want to hear another word from any of the centrist or right-wing Democrats about unity because you don't believe in it. You use that as a tactic to scream at the left to vote for your preferred shitty candidates. Like, I get ideological disagreements. They happen. They exist in the world. Totally fine. But at least be honest about it. Yeah, I disagree with the left flank, and I agree with the corporatists. At least say that, but they don't say that. They gaslight you. Oh, yeah, why? Unity. Anyway, let's talk about how Bernie Sanders is terrible. I thought you just said unity. What do you mean? So it was Joe Manchin and John Tester, the Blue Dog Democrats, who were basically saying, like, yeah, it would help. It would be very good for Trump if Bernie was the nominee. I love how they're so convinced that Blue Dog Democrats are somehow more popular and somehow better when somebody should ask Joe Manchin and John Tester, oh, hey, how are your fellow Blue Dogs doing? Oh, right, they all lost, and they're not there anymore, and they got wiped out from coast to coast. So you have to understand that they actually do not give a shit about evidence and data and what happened in the past few election cycles. They work backwards from their conclusion. So they believe it as an article of faith. It's an axiom. It's a tautology to them. It's true because it's true. Democrats need to be centrist. Democrats need to be corporatist, and that's the way to win. And don't ask me to provide an actual argument for it. Don't ask me to give you any evidence of it. It's true because it's true. Even though the best example of this, man, is Joe Donnelly versus Sherrod Brown. Joe Donnelly ran in Indiana as basically a Republican, even though he's a Democrat. He released ads praising Reagan nonstop. He spoke about how he agrees with the wall, and he was shitting on universal health care and all that stuff. And he got his ass handed to him in the last election. Now, Sherrod Brown, the state over in Ohio, he ran pretty unapologetically to the left. He was hammering away on trade. He's been kind of upfront on many economic issues, fighting for, right alongside Bernie Sanders with a more left-wing philosophy. So he ran not hiding his leftism, and he won. So you couldn't get a better test. Sure, there's a handful of examples like Joe Manchin, who's like, a fucking magician who spits in the eye of the base and still gets elected in West Virginia. But outside of Joe Manchin, I mean, all the other centrist Democrats and hardcore corporatists and blue dogs, they get wiped out. Because it turns out it's a terrible strategy when you're running to be a Democrat and you tell the Democratic base that you think they're stupid and you agree with Republicans. Because the Republicans aren't going to vote for you because there's a D by your name and they can't stand you. So, Republicans aren't going to vote for you because they're drunk on Fox News, and the Democrats are not going to vote for you now because you basically told them not to vote for you because you were shitting on all left ideas. So, but again, they don't care about any of that stuff. They don't care that you had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's an insurgent left candidate who knocked off one of the most powerful Democrats in the country. They literally argue, like, that's a one-off. That doesn't count. That doesn't matter. Now, in regards to what was going on in this article, have they looked at no polls? But apparently they haven't. Apparently they've looked at no polls. Every single poll of Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump has Bernie kicking his ass. I mean, like, seriously, foot thoroughly implanted in booty hole and twisted. Just in every conceivable way. He's up nationally, he's up by about a dozen points. Now, this is where people say, yeah, but how'd those polls work out for Hillary? She was only up by 3 or 4 points. And by the way, she won the popular vote by millions, so the polls were not that far off. It's just that the way that her support and Trump's support was distributed throughout the country was such that Trump won the Electoral College because he knocked off the Rust Belt. So it's not a compelling argument when you're like, oh, what about the polls last time? They weren't right. They weren't really that far off. The pollsters were wrong. They all said Hillary was going to win. But the polls themselves were not that far off because she won the popular vote. So it's weird when poll denialism becomes like an entrenched belief, and they don't even give specifics to it. They just broad, like, yeah, fuck the polls. Whenever we question polls, we have a very specific reason. Like when it's Biden versus Bernie and they polled next to no millennials, it's like, okay, then you can criticize the poll. But if every single poll at the national level and every single poll in the Rust Belt is saying Bernie wins, and that's the other point, is that Bernie has internal polling which saw that he was up 10 to 12 points in virtually every Rust Belt state, well, there is no denying that. That's as real as a heart attack. So notice, in order to make this argument, they didn't mention a single poll in the article. Why? Because they couldn't. Because if they mentioned any poll, they would have said, oh my God, Bernie's way up. So it's so frustrating where you know damn well if they were writing an article back in 2016 or 2015 about how Hillary's better versus Trump, there would be citations in the article of like, and this poll has her up 4 points on Trump nationally. So when they want to make the case, they'll make the case and they'll lay out poll numbers. When they want to ignore the poll numbers to make their case, they'll ignore the poll numbers to make their case. Again, notice, they're working backwards from their conclusion. Now, the final point I want to make is this. It's the entire Republican Party, and when I say that, I mean in Washington, D.C., and like half the Democrats, certainly all the corporate centrist Democrats, those are the people who are like, oh, well, obviously Trump wins if it's Bernie versus Trump. Notice something. These are the same people who were absolutely convinced that Mitt Romney would beat Barack Obama in 2012 and that Hillary Clinton would beat Donald Trump in 2016. You think that's kind of relevant, right? Shouldn't that be added in the article? Like, oh yeah, by the way, all the people who are making this case were dead wrong in the last 2 elections. Dead wrong. Dead wrong. They don't mention that. They don't talk about it. They have to bury that fact. Because you're supposed to think when you read this article, oh, very serious Republicans in D.C. and very serious Democrats say it's a gift to Trump and Trump will win if it's Trump versus Bernie. You think they would learn some humility. You think they would learn it. You think they would go, you know what, maybe enough with these fucking bold-ass predictions that I get dead wrong because I'm massively out of touch with the American people. But they don't learn, and they don't care. Because really, there is an agenda here. And the agenda is, as I've told you guys repeatedly, what corporate media does is they push out the narrative that they want to push out, and as they're pushing it out, they just pretend like they're calling balls and strikes. So in other words, if you want to take down Bernie Sanders, you release 1,000 articles going, Bernie, a uniquely weak candidate against Trump. Many are saying this. Isn't he a weak candidate against Trump? Wouldn't Biden be really strong against Trump? Wouldn't Buttigieg be really strong against Trump? But Bernie, that would be weak. That would be weak. So as they push out exactly what they want you to take away from it, they say, us? No, we're not the originators of this narrative. We're just saying. We're just reporting on what is. So it is the case that Bernie's weak, and we're just saying that that's the objective reality. And now we're going to write 1,000 articles about that, and then try to make people think, plant a seed and make people think, well, I guess Bernie is weak against Trump. Everybody's always saying it in mainstream media. But then meanwhile, when you go to the actual people, the polls are overwhelming, and it's not even close. So they still, listen, guys, the real divide in this country is not even Democrat versus Republican. The real divide in this country among the actual people is the haves versus the have-nots, the elites versus the populists, people who care about average people, the working class, and people who only represent that top 1%. That's the real divide in the country. So when Donald Trump gets exposed as fighting for the 1%, and Bernie comes out there and he's a real populist and he rips the mask off of Trump's fake populism, yeah, Bernie's going to win. Listen, man, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The hard part for Bernie is the primary. The easy part for Bernie is the general. Because if it's him in the general, what's Trump going to do? What's he going to do? He's going to scream crazy Bernie and get elected? Like just talk, oh, he's so crazy. Oh, Venezuela. Socialism bad. When you're a one-trick pony and the stuff you're saying is shouting into the abyss and it's not landing because you got the other guy who's focused like a laser on Medicare for all, getting everybody covered, focused like a laser on increasing wages, focused like a laser on ending the wars, focused like a laser on an infrastructure deal, focused like a laser on criminal justice reform and legalizing marijuana. When you have a guy who's pouring on substance and the response is a reality star buffoon who only has nicknames and scorn, what's going to happen? You know what's going to happen. They don't know, you know. So this is just, the same people who got it dead wrong in 2012, the same people who got it dead wrong in 2016 are now convinced. And they're trying to let you know, oh, yes, Republicans are praying for Bernie as the Democratic nominee. Well, I got news for everybody. Republicans in D.C. are idiots. As if they know. Like, as if they know what's good or what's not good for them. They have no idea. They're up their own ass. They're complete and utter corporate sellouts, and they're backwards as fuck on social issues. They're wrong about everything. And now we're supposed to go, oh my God, the people who've been wrong about everything for decades are now saying they want Bernie as the nominee. Well, guess what? Democrats in 2016 wanted Trump as the nominee on the Republican side. And then what happened? They were really scared of Marco Rubio? There's a decent chance Hillary would have beaten Marco Rubio. There's a decent chance Hillary would have beaten Jeb. But not Trump. So perhaps they don't know dick, and that should be mentioned in the article. Or better yet, the article shouldn't have been written at all because it's a piece of shit.